So the thing with Venezuela, guys, is that Venezuela had just signed, I think on December 28th or so, Venezuela has signed a deal to do all of their oil transactions in BRICS currency led by the yuan. This was the red line for Washington, because they could not have Venezuela, who has the most oil reserves in the world, doing oil transactions in BRICS currencies while supplying our adversary. Okay? China buys a majority of Venezuela's oil, and China also buys a majority of Iran's oil, two countries that are heavily sanctioned by us. So not only that, you guys got to remember, the petrodollar has been getting weakened. Reserve currency status is getting weakened. What do we have left? Military might. Okay? That's what we have left is military might. They said, you know what, the diplomacy, because diplomacy would mean that we would have to pay a fair price for the oil. We don't want to pay a fair price. We want to pay less. We want to have control of it. They were getting barely 1 million barrels a day out of there. They need way more than that. Maduro, they felt, was not getting enough oil out there, so they said, you know what, that shit. He's not getting enough barrels out there. We can take control of this. We can build the infrastructure. We can make it better. We can make more money. Also, guys, keep in mind, also, the oil, because people are going to sit there and say, well, Myron, what about the oil that we make here? We make a bunch of oil in America. The shale that we make in America is not the oil and not the type of oil that our refineries, the crude that we produce, is not the same crude that countries like Venezuela, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East produce, that we actually run on. The refineries that we built, okay, 50 years ago, were built on the crude that comes from the Middle East and Venezuela, the thick stuff, okay? Not the expensive lighter oil that we have here. Our refineries, our system is built upon the oil from the Middle East and the oil from like Iran and Venezuela. That's what our refineries operate on, okay? So that's what you guys also need to know as well. When it comes to that situation, when it comes to, oh, Myron, we have our own oil here. That's a lie that they've been telling you guys for a very long time to kind of keep the fear mongering. But the reality is that the oil that we have here is not the oil that this country runs on, unfortunately. The refineries that we have here don't coincide with the oil that we have here. Another thing you guys need to also understand, we've been utilizing our petroleum reserves for the past few years under the Biden administration. You guys are saying, oh, well, gas prices aren't that bad, Myron. Well, the reason why is because we've been using our petroleum reserves. Now, for those of you that don't know what the petroleum reserves are, these are reserves that we have here in the United States for emergency situations. You know, outages, military needs, national security, whatever. But here's the thing. Biden, in the face of really bad approval ratings, has been releasing this oil, okay, this petroleum from the reserves. For a couple of years now, Trump has been continued on. So the petroleum reserves are low, okay? You guys see where I'm going here? So let's go back and summarize. Because I really want you guys to understand this. First, the 4 pillars the United States is built on: petrodollar, reserve currency status, SWIFT, military might. All 4 are being challenged right now by BRICS, the de-dollarization, Saudi Arabia now doing all their transactions in oil, and then other countries slowly using BRICS more. BRICS rising up and the United States not holding reserve currency status. Also, countries like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, etc., showing that SWIFT doesn't necessarily control everything. You can still thrive without being on SWIFT. So all 4 of these pillars that we've built our power on have been challenged. So now Trump needs to take that power back. Okay? So what did Trump do? Well, we know the petrodollar's been going down. We know that our petroleum reserves have been used. Well, what's the next logically sound step? What's the next country that has the most crude reserves? Venezuela. Do they have a military to defend themselves? Not really. Do they have nuclear weapons? Nope. Okay. So petroleum reserves low? Bad. Maduro doing deals in BRICS currency? That was the red line. That was the end right there, okay? And then the petrodollar dying? No. Those 3 things right there, petrodollar dying, doing deals in BRICS currency led by the yuan, and then petroleum reserves. Those are the 3 main reasons that Trump invaded Venezuela. Of course, they used the lie of it was a drug enforcement operation. That's a bullshit because they indicted him back 6 years ago under Trump 1. Why didn't they get him back then? I'll tell you why they didn't get him back then. Because the petrodollar was still strong, reserve currency status was still high, right? And Russia didn't invade Ukraine yet. So SWIFT wasn't challenged. That's why we didn't invade back in 2020. See, and this is the analysis that no one wants to give you guys. Because if he was such a dangerous drug trafficker, like a narco-terrorist trafficker, like they said before in the 2020 indictment, they would have got him back then, but they didn't. And it's because these elements that I mentioned to you guys, weakening of the petrodollar, SWIFT being challenged, and then the petroleum reserves, none of these things existed back in 2020 when he got indicted. You guys see where I'm going with this now? So they had to get him out of there, okay? They had to get him out of there. Now, let's talk about Iran. Because after Venezuela was toppled by U.S. Special Forces, The Chinese are smart. Guess who they started buying more oil from? The Iranians. Right? Now, here's the thing, and this is where we're in a very weird spot. If the Chinese continue to purchase oil from Iran, because remember, what other country is sanctioned to hell where the Chinese can get cheap oil? Well, Venezuela's gone. What's left? Iran. But here's the issue. As we know, the United States, alongside the Mossad Israeli government, are astroturfing and trying to destroy the Iranian government. Manufacturing these protests with their dollar, whatever it may be, right? If the Chinese continue to purchase Iranian oil, at some point, this is going to create jobs and it's going to bring prosperity back to Iran. Their money's going to come back up. Now, here's the other problem. That money, right, that Iran makes, guess where it's going to go? It's going to go to defense. And we know when it comes to Iranians and defense, they're going to manufacture more ballistic missiles. They're going to purchase Russian weaponry, air defense, all that shit. So now it puts us on an even tighter timeline because now that Venezuela's out, another reason too why the Israelis were really on board with taking out Venezuela is because, number one, Venezuela didn't recognize Israel. Number two, it would limit Iran's strength in shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. For those of you that don't know, the Strait of Hormuz, and I'll show you guys this real quick on a map. The Strait of Hormuz, guys, right here, okay, this area right here. So here's a map of the Middle East, right? Is this little strait right here, okay? Now, this strait, something like 30% of the world's oil goes through here, okay? If this were to be shut down, we're talking about a big problem economically, okay? Now, to soften the blow from the strategy that Iran might employ in the course of a existential crisis, a serious war, right? Because they obviously reserve the right to shut down this strait. Having access to Venezuelan oil will be great, right? We'll have access to this Venezuelan oil. Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, woo. But here's the problem what they didn't realize. The Chinese, right, are going to buy the oil from Iran instead. And that money is going to be used to beef up their military. Iran makes their own ballistic missiles. They have very smart scientists. That's why it always kills them. But they got a lot of them. Okay? So what this basically done, what this has done, this has created almost a time clock, a ticking time clock. Because Iran is weak now. Yeah, the Chinese are going to buy more oil from them, but this is going to take time for them to start getting the money and everything else like that. So this gives the Israelis a tighter timeline to make anything happen. And this is what I'm talking about, guys, right? This is where we need to have a very difficult discussion. This, my friends, is what happens when you live in a multipolar world. Okay? The United States is no longer the only global superpower. Okay? The disparity that we once enjoyed between these countries is pretty much dissipated. We are not that far ahead of China and Russia to the point where we could tell them what to do. And Putin talked about this back in, I think, Munich in 2007, of being in a multipolar world. It's here, boys. It's here. And for some odd reason, American political commentators refuse to accept the fact that we live in a multipolar world. If you truly love America, you need to be able to understand the truth and the reality of where we stand. And where we stand nowadays is we are not that more advanced than China and Russia. They have nuclear weapons, they have a capable military, they have huge militaries, and our hegemon status, especially with our financial institutions, does not have the same, how do I say this, asphyxiation effect that it used to have. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, China, all these countries have proven, right, and BRICS in general, that there is a rising alternative. And this is the biggest reason why I don't like the Venezuelan invasion. I don't know if you guys noticed, but a bunch of countries came forward to condemn the United States for that. Okay? And the reason why they condemn the United States is because we are now hypocrites. Did we not just lecture Russia for what? Oh, 4 years now, going on 4 years. They invaded back in 2022. It's been 4 years, chat. Did we not lecture them that you cannot invade a country and take away their sovereignty? We did the same shit. Article 2, we did the same shit. So who are we to lecture Russia? Have we not been talking about China better not invade Taiwan? Who are we to now tell China they can't invade Taiwan? And what we've basically done is we have validified and vindicated both Putin and Ping, leaders of Russia and China respectively. They've been talking about this for years, saying that we are bullies. We use our financial power and overrepresentation in our military to bully people, sanction people, to control governments, to run coups, and we're hypocrites. That's what they've been saying about us for years. Us invading Venezuela confirmed the hypocrisy and it confirmed what they've been saying. So guess what's going to happen? Countries are going to slowly de-dollarize. Countries are going to slowly start to buy more gold. Countries are slowly going to try to distance themselves from SWIFT. countries are slowly going to start doing secret partnerships with China and Russia because we've kind of exposed ourselves where if you don't comply with what we do, we're going to invade you anyway. So now holding US dollars is a liability, not an asset. Now having oil and not doing transactions in the US dollar is a liability, not an asset. Now, if we don't follow what the United States says, we can get kicked off SWIFT. Russia has shown that you don't need to be under SWIFT to be successful. Venezuela tried to show that if you have a lot of oil, you can go ahead and not be under the US dollar system in the hegemon. US said, nope, and invaded. So what comes off is supposed to be a show of strength actually was a declaration of weakness because we had to invade them versus exercising some level of diplomacy or trade. We are invading, doing regime change wars, putting people in sanctions. Meanwhile, what is China doing? China is building. China's creating infrastructure. China's investing. So they look like a better world partner than we do. And these are ugly truths that American political commentators don't want to acknowledge. Oh, you're a China puppet. Oh, you're a Putin puppet, blah, blah, blah. Guys, this is the reality. We are in a multipolar world. And right now, it looks for a lot of countries that it's better to work with China than us. China has been in a war since 1979. We've been in several. When's the last coup that China ran to destabilize the government? I can't even think of one, but we've done several, maybe 50 plus. At least it's not public. I'm sure China does a whole bunch of bullshit behind the scenes. And the thing that pisses me off is that China's a corrupt government. They're communists, they're evil, they suppress their own people, they repress their own people, they're up. But they look like the better global partner. Also, China doesn't give a what you do. Hey, we just want to do trade with you. That's it. We don't care if you got a democracy, we don't care if you're a dictator, whatever. We just want to do business with you. We don't give a That's attractive to a lot of countries out there. Or you're not going to meddle in our affairs? You're not going to intervene? You just want to do business? Awesome, let's do it. Meanwhile, us, okay, we'll do business with you, but you got to use dollars. You got to have a democracy. You got to do this. You got to do that. If you're not going to do this, then we need you to do this. Guys, if you're an up-and-coming country, who you don't want to work with? You want to work with the United States? Or are you going to want to work with China or Russia? You can't just invade every BRICS country. Now it's about influence. And we're slowly losing influence. And I wish more American geopolitical commentators talked about this because this is a problem. Okay? We can't just be sitting here like America and be and not be aware of what the is going on. America. It's like, bro, we got to understand our adversaries. We got to know our adversaries. We have to know ourselves. The art of war. Know thy enemy and know thyself. Bruh, this is what China's doing. China is doing deals by investing and helping create infrastructure and diplomacy. What are we doing? Invading countries, running coups, destabilizing, doing regime change wars, and we're being hypocrites. So we are absolutely losing influence. And not only are we losing influence, we're losing influence in South America. What, 54, I think, out of 55 Latin American countries? Or no, that's Africa. Africa's working with China heavy. China's building all types of infrastructure in Africa. But in Latin America, lots of countries are doing trade with China. The Monroe Doctrine is a joke. China's been in South America forever. I could have told y'all this back in 2018. They're all over the Bahamas. They're all over Jamaica. Go to Jamaica. Anyone go to Jamaica? People say, oh, the Monroe Doctrine. You clearly haven't been to the South America. You haven't been in the Caribbean. There's Chinese all over Jamaica, bro. I'm not kidding around. Chinese nigga, bro. Eyes like this. But still says, Bomba. They're all over the Bahamas, too. They've been all over South America for a minute. Brazil's a part of BRICS. What are y'all talking about, Monroe Doctrine? China and Russia have been in South America for a minute, dude. Now, let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about Greenland. Now, you guys are probably wondering, yo, Myron, why do we care so much about Greenland? I'll tell you guys why. Because there's rare earth minerals there. Two of them especially. Memorize these two. And I haven't seen anybody talk about this shit. So, samarium and dysprosium, okay? I think maybe on the chart, it's SM for samarium, and then for dysprosium, DY and terbium, TB. What you guys need to know that these are heavy rare elements that Greenland is rich in, right? And basically, they dramatically improve high temperature performance and prevent demagnetization under jet engine bay heat, avionic stress, or other extreme conditions. Essential for modern fighter jet upgrades, flight control actuators, sensors, and power systems. Without them, magnets would fail and overheat in high operational environments. Same exact thing pretty much for samarium. Also renowned for exceptional heat resistance, they maintain strong magnetic performance at temperature hot enough to melt lead. That's why we want Greenland. Okay? It is a strategic necessity when our air superiority and our fighter jets run on these metals. Pop Smoke says the strategic necessity to take Venezuela back from China. They were building military infrastructure. Bro, bro, stop being a dude. Oh my God. Did I not just explain to you the 3 main reasons why he invaded? I just explained to you the 3 main reasons why he invaded. Military infrastructure is not on that list, dude. Pop, sometimes you're an idiot, dude. I hate to say it, bro. You watch sometimes you're just a dumb. You think if the military infrastructure was that powerful, he wouldn't have said that shit, bro? He would have said that was the main reason? Dude, it's for the oil. And it's not only for the oil, it's because the oil challenges U.S. hegemony of the U.S. dollar. It's way past, and I explained it to you already. Petroleum reserves, the weakness of the petrodollar, and then Venezuela, the red line, was wanting to do deals in BRICS currency. Simple. And also, you got to keep in mind, if Venezuela was able to get away with that, that would embolden other countries to get off of the U.S. dollar system, to get off of SWIFT, to basically give a middle finger to the U.S. financial infrastructure that's been created to control countries. Because it would show, hey, look, even a poor country like Venezuela that doesn't have nukes can operate outside of SWIFT, operate outside the petrodollar, and operate under BRICS. That is why the U.S. invaded, bro. Stop being a dumb, man. Holy shit. Nigga, like, don't be. If it was the military infrastructure like you claim, Trump would have said that immediately. We had to go in there. They were building military infrastructure. That wasn't it, dude. It's oil and our hegemon of the U.S. dollar. Come on, dude. Like, economic.